Hello good folks, it is I, David, back with another video. And before I get into the main body of it, just a couple of housekeeping things. First of all, in the last video it didn't come across how thankful I am for all of you who have subscribed and helped me reach my goal of 500 subscribers. Woohoo! From this point going forward, I think now is probably time to get more of a gauge of what you, the audience, actually want from me. So hopefully by the time this video goes up, the first ever community post, and if I can work out how to do it, it's going to be one of those polls. That should be there over on the community tab, and essentially I'm going to be asking what sort of builds do you want to see me doing next. It's not going to be for the very next video, because for the next little while I do want to make sure that all of those odds and ends of Christmas presents and things that I've purchased since are done and never hit the pile of shame. I definitely want those completed, and we are well underway for that, so that's a good thing. Oh, and of course there are other videos that I've already promised you. Yes, I know, I'm rubbish like that. But after I've got that out of the way, then what do you guys want to see? Oh, and if you are new and have stumbled across this video and my stuff for the first time, and you want to see an old bloke making a hash of doing wargaming stuff, feel free to stick around and hit the subscribe button and get notifications, all that sort of stuff. And yeah, it means that you can put your tuppence worth in on the polls as well. So what is on the books for today? Well, I want to continue on with the Sabbat Crusade Chaos Forces, mainly those vehicles. I want to get an undercoat, and if possible, if I've got time, a top coat on that flyer. I want to at least attempt to get up to the stage of doing an oil wash on one of the Steg 4s, just so that I can see what the colour scheme is going to be like. One thing that I should have done was, once I'd finished off that Lock Saddle Mercenary, was actually get basing done. So I want to put some industrial rubble onto that, get that drying overnight, and then, you know, get on with undercoating and painting that up, because I am interested to see what that is going to turn out like. And if that's not enough, maybe I'll have time for something else, who knows. Anyway, I shall crack on and let's see what's on the workbench. Right, I've grabbed a Zoiken Steg 4 because I want to do a sort of test of that ochre colour that they are supposed to have for their armour. I went for this rather than the AT-72 because the 72 is probably a wee bit more on the intricate side and is probably going to be more of a pain if I have to re-undercoat it because this doesn't work. Now, having a look through my paints, I had a choice. Now, this is a Luftwaffe Yellow RLM 27. This is an Aeromaster paint. I am not going to use that. It's a little bit on the light side. I was seriously eyeing it up because I thought it would dull down nicely over those sort of darker undercoats. But when I've come to check sort of like that against ochre, it's just not. Yeah, yeah. I do like the colour, and I'm definitely going to be using it for something. In fact, if memory serves me correct, there is another Chaos unit that almost uses a mustard yellow for their uniforms. I can't remember what it is. Sons of Sec? Could be. Alright, but anyway, because this is now out of production from what I've seen, I am going to be reserving that. That is for special projects only. And funnily enough, when I've come to colour match on the screen, the best match that I have is good old bronzed flesh. Now, I'm not sure what it's going to look like on a grey undercoat in terms of sort of like a full set of armour plates, but I'm going to give it a try. And of course, there is going to be a wash of some kind going on over the top of that, which may well blend it down. So let's give that a try. Alright, so let's see what this turns out like using the good old dab method. You know, I am not 100% certain about this colour. I think quite possibly because I'm just used to seeing it on sort of like faces and hands. It looks out of place. but it's got to be said, it is different enough, I am certain, from the Armenian tanks that it's going to be distinctive. Plus, I guess, you know, a flesh colour for Chaos is not necessarily inappropriate. I'm not going to go massively overboard on the base steel on this one, because the Zoikin stuff was sort of newly manufactured, but I am just going to dot a bit on sort of more prominent edges, things like handles, etc., where it would get rubbed off. While I'm not 100% certain about it, I do like the overall colour, and I think having it more uniform rather than sort of more, you know, decrepit and rusty is probably the way to go about it. Anyway, I will nash on and get this all done. I'm not unhappy with the way that this is turning out. It maybe looks a little bit strange to me, but there is the possibility that that is simply confirmation bias, because I know that this is bronzed flesh and I've put it on metal, whereas at the end of the day it's simply a colour. But I am sort of used to seeing that colour on hands and faces, and it maybe in the back of my mind looks a little bit odd. However, we will crack on, because as I say, I am not unhappy with the way that it is turning out. Now, I do not want it dulled all the way down with the same oil wash that I have been using, because that is very dark. I'm going to make a new batch of lighter one just for these pieces of armour. And this is just a cheap set of oil paints, and I'm going to go for a yellow ochre because it's supposed to be ochre coloured, but I am going to bring it back to a slightly darker shade with some burnt sienna. And I don't want a huge amount of the burnt sienna, but I do want a goodly amount of the yellow ochre. That's been added to some mineral turpentine and given a good mix. Yeah, I'd say that's looking a wee bit darker than the colour of the armour. Hopefully it's not going to dull it down too much, but it is going to blend things together. Alright, so with a crack, Nigel, and then just get it slathered all over, and then of course blot it off. Yeah, I'm not unhappy with that. Now, one of the things I did want to get done tonight was to get some ground cover onto the Loch Saddle Mercenary, just to, you know, start seeing what it was going to look like in its finished form and get an undercoat on and things like that. As I'd said previously, I think it was in the last video, I wanted to use what I term my industrial rubble mix, and of course what's happened, I can't find the jar of it. So I thought, well, I may as well show you guys how I make this particular ground cover. You may find it useful. Got some water here. I've got some plaster. The first thing that I want to do is get some of this made up, because it is an integral part of it, but it's going to take a while to dry out. And I would say that's probably around about enough. Give it a good mix through. Now, basically just got a flat plastic tray here, and that is just going straight into there like that to dry out, and I'll pop that off to one side. Now, the industrial rubble that I make comes essentially in 3 grades of material: small, medium, large. Smallest is sand, medium is grit. Now, for those two, I've actually got a big bag of builder sand that I got from the hardware store, and that is a mix of sand and grit in there, so that is an ideal base for the first 2 bits. And then the 3rd grade is the chunky bits. Now, these are the ones where you want to make it look man-made, so it is not a natural material, it is something that can be considered to be industrial, and it's just stuff that's been sort of like scattered around the battlefield and that kind of thing. What am I talking about? Alright, well, offcuts of wire. They look like pipes, and of course you don't get natural material in that sort of shape. That goes in. Offcuts of sprue. Trim that down. You've even got some joins there. That'll go in. Old stirring sticks. They can get hacked apart, and that will make sort of planks of wood. That can go in. Sort of like the sprues from MDF buildings. That's all lovely regular edges. Cut that down. That'll go in. Absolutely anything that you can find. Look, a little washer bead. there you are. And basically we get a nice big mix of the builder sand, or your sand and your grit, plus those offcuts, and we mix it all together and we just slap it onto the miniature. And the great thing is that you will get small amounts of the sort of man-made stuff sticking in there with it, kind of half buried, because there's all of that sand and grit in there as well, and you can just pick those out in a slightly different colour. So I'll crack on and I will start getting this filled up with more man-made material. Alright, so I'm at the stage where I've got a few different bits of material in there. There's cut down square sprue, cut down round sprue, some of the sticks, I've added a few more of those little round beads, bits of wire, both bare wire and plastic coated wire, just for pipes and things like that, because remember, while it looks small to us, when it's on a model, it's going to look larger. But there are other materials that you can use as well. Now, this is, you know, that kind of mesh bag that sometimes fruit and veggie comes in, and if you just take some snips of some of that, it is basically going to be looking sort of like, you know, fencing wire. The other thing I wanted to bring your attention to is reclaimed packaging. Well, yes, it's just card. By the time you get it and you paint it, it's going to be looking like metal sheets. Why don't I get some strips of this, sort of distress it in a couple of places, get it more sort of buckled looking. Essentially, anything can go in here that does not look natural. So yeah, you can see the way that that is starting to mix together, and because you're not going to go massively overboard with the amount of sort of man-made bits that you put in there, you're just going to get the odd bit around that is going to be in your model, and it will give you the option of giving it that spot colour. But we are not finished. I'll get more of the sort of man-made stuff in there, but we're still waiting for that plaster of Paris, because that is going to be our masonry blocks. Right, here's our tray of plaster of Paris, and part of the reason why I popped it in a nice squishy tray was so that I could get away with doing this. And basically, as you can see, all I'm doing is breaking it up. I don't mind at all that there are you know, sort of curved areas or things like that. You're going to get, I guess, sort of corners of Art Deco buildings, that sort of thing. And we just get it all pressed down, mash it all up. And the reason why I'm adding so much of this is because the one thing that you can say about, you know, industrial areas is that they are going to have a load of sort of concrete and things like that. And that is all going to be regular stuff. It's going to have that sort of flatness to it. And where it's been broken up, it's got those sort of raggy edges. I'll leave some larger chunks in there, and then that all gets added into there like that. Give it a stir through like so, and I want almost neat PVA for this, because obviously it's got to certainly grab onto those larger pieces. I'm just going to use a very small drop of soapy water, get that mixed through. That's just to give it a little bit of thinness to flow things around, and the soap obviously is there to break up the surface tension. Then let's have this bad boy. Make sure I get all the way underneath. And there's a couple of little areas where it's starting to pull away, so I'm adding extra glue to them. I'm really thickening it on, and then into the mix. Yeah, we've got some nice rubble bits and things like that in there. I'm just going to selectively pop something a bit more man-made on. Now I'm going to let that dry a little bit, but before it goes off for its undercoat, I am going to be, and what I would recommend strongly on this kind of thing, because there are those big chunky bits, is actually add a sealer coat. Now, you've seen me do that before, but it's essentially about 1 part PVA, 2 parts IPA, and then top off the rest with soapy water. And it's nice and runny, but you kind of squirt it on over the top, and it just adds that protective coat, and it will give a little bit more adhesion to some of those larger pieces. So a quick roundup of what I managed to get done. I got the Steg 4 up to the stage of getting its oil wash. I got not only the undercoat but the top coat on the flyer, and I got the Loxatl based and I even managed to get time to force dry the basing material and get it off for an undercoat. Comparing the Zoikin to the Armenian, yes, I am happy that there is a difference in the colour scheme there, so I am going to carry on with this one. As for the flyer, it is now at the stage of getting spot colour put onto it. Those windscreens, the engines, the weaponry. Most of it I am going to leave sort of like that flat red colour, and although it's a bit difficult to see from this particular angle because I did want that sort of front profile, there is sort of a graduating colour to it because I did most of the spray painting over a black undercoat and it was from the front angle, so you've got a lot of nice shadows at the back. So yeah, apologies that I didn't manage to get anything actually completed this time round, but that is good progress. Certainly it means that I can crack on with the Zoikin armour, and we're not that far off having that blood pact flyer done, and I get to mess about with the ground cover and camouflage on that lock saddle mercenary. Chances are you'll see that or the finished results in the next video. Oh yeah, and of course you also managed to get that little bonus of how I do my industrial ground cover. So if you have enjoyed what you've seen and you've managed to stick around for this long, then please do consider subscribing if you haven't already. Hit the like button, drop a comment down below, and remember to check out the community tab because hopefully I've managed to get that poll up. Until I see you good folks next time, do take care of yourselves. Toodle bit for now.